Full press hockey coverage with Jim Biringer.
Hello, everyone. This is Jim Biringer here at Full Press NHL, back alongside David Calabretta. We're back for our weekly Rumors segment, Rumors Podcast, as we break it down before the NHL draft next week. Coming off the Stanley Cup final, the Dream Team is back. We're back together. The fans wanted it. We're here.
Happy to be back, man. Let's do it.
Let's do it, man. There's a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, the Florida Panthers, they win the second straight Stanley Cup, but they got a lot of question marks now. Some key contributors are free agents. They brought in Brad Marchand at the trade deadline. Aaron Ekblad's a free agent. Sam Bennett, who just won the Conn Smythe Trophy, is a free agent. Bill Zito's got a lot of work to do like he did last year after the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I mean, he did say he'd like to run it back, and he does want to use the cap to its fullest. You know, he's got the ownership approval. But, you know, if we're going by likelihood and what I think it would be right now, like just based on right now, I'd probably put Bennett at 1 as most likely to stay. And then I'd probably lean Ekblad and then Marchand. I don't know about you, though.
Look, I think Bennett's staying. I don't think the way he plays the game, the style of play that he has, if you look at it, he fits the Florida Panthers. I'm not saying he's not going to be successful anyplace else. Who wouldn't want that style of player? But Paul Maurice's system benefits him so much as a second-line center, what he can do, agitator role. Like, he fits that system of the Florida Panthers. If he goes to Toronto or he says he goes to, like, say, New Jersey, New York, say he ends up in Montreal, right? And people are going to freak out in Montreal because they're like, oh, it's going to – and it's no. I'm saying hypothetically, Bennett is actually a good player for the Montreal Canadiens because that's the kind of player that they need. But I'm not sure Martin St. Louis' system would benefit his style of game.
I see it like this. Why would Sam Bennett or why would a team who's not really a contending team sign him knowing that his game best suits for the month of May and June? Right? So for example, let's say he signs, I don't know, it won't happen, but let's say a team like Anaheim wants to give him the bag. Are Anaheim Ducks going to be playing hockey in the month of May?
No.
Just because they signed Sam Bennett? You know, regular season, he's a 50, 60-point player, and obviously he brings a lot in an 82-game season, but you see the real Sam Bennett in the playoffs. So, you know, if I'm a team who's not ready to compete yet or even contend, it doesn't make sense to sign Sam Bennett.
No, it doesn't. And look, I'm glad you mentioned Anaheim, even though we're staying on the Florida Panthers train real quick, because I'm hearing reports that potentially, you know, Joel Quenneville being the new head coach there in Anaheim. We know Pat Verbeek at the end of the year said, hey, my belief is we're a playoff team. He has Joel Quenneville there as a head coach. Aaron Ekblad played for Joel Quenneville, only be it that one season in Florida. If the Ducks really want to make a serious run in that Pacific Division, because we know who the contenders are there, and we know who they have to pass, Aaron Ekblad's a good fit for that team.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you look down the right D-line, you know, Gudis, Helison, and Leno, that won't cut it for Anaheim. And I think Ekblad would be a perfect fit. He played with Quenneville already. He's a Joel Quenneville guy, so no, that makes perfect sense for Anaheim compared to Sam Bennett.
Right, exactly. And I think Ekblad, the way he's talked during the playoffs, though, he's like, I bleed for Florida Panthers. This is a place I want to be. I've talked to some people. He hasn't come out right and said it, and why would anybody say they're going to take less money? But he wants to stay in Florida. He feels like he's a Florida Panther. And the issue for me is with the Florida Panthers, if you look at it, we saw it last year in the offseason. They lost Brandon Montour. They weren't going to be able to keep him. But they had to go replace him, and they were able to find Seth Jones. That means now a second year in a row, you're not going to have a right-handed shot defenseman. And now you got to go find one with term and reasonable term. And that's hard to do.
No, yeah. And I think for Ekblad, you know, for him, the only way he stays is if he takes that pay cut. Because, you know, if he goes on the market, he's getting $7-8 million and he'll get some term. So he's going to have to deal right with Florida and make sure he wants to be there. And he does want to be there. But we're talking like a significant pay cut.
Oh, yeah. We're talking less than what he's making now. A lot less than what he's making now.
So is he willing to do that? I mean, maybe. The way he talks about Florida and, you know, me as a player, I just won 2 Stanley Cups with them. And, I love it here. It's a beautiful city, beautiful place. It's something he might consider, but it would have a lot of people's fans around the league have their eyeballs on like, oh my God, no state tax and so on and so forth.
But again, Bill Zito, we have to give him credit for figuring out a way to, work the cap and be able to make these trades and get all these players like Gustav Forley a very reasonable contract, Barkov, reasonable contract, Lundell on a reasonable contract, or Hagee, reasonable contract, Reinhart, okay, yeah, I'm just going to sign 8 times what I got last year, 8-6, and I'm going to have a 4-goal game in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final and win the Stanley. Like that to me was a great performance, and they have all these guys and they're going to have more cap space as it goes down. But yeah, do I see a scenario where Ekblad, they go to him and say, hey, can you defer some money to later on?
I mean, they did the same thing with Frank Vatrano, right? In his recent contract in Anaheim.
Yeah.
So there's pathways that are legal. So, I mean, Florida's definitely going to look at all options here. But like I said, I think their priority right now is locking up Sam Bennett. I don't think he's someone who's going to take a pay cut. His stock has been rising big time, and
I think it's 8 times 8.
Yeah, and it's like if he goes to the market, he could probably get 9-10 million. But so I think Florida they have to at least have $7 to $8 million aside for Sam Bennett.
Easy.
That they could go to Aaron Ekblad.
And then with Marchand, if he does stay, I mean, I know the reports are like, oh, you could get a 4-year deal somewhere. Look, he has the advantage, and teams now have the advantage on him because it'd be like, well, you're over 35.
Yeah.
Realistically, we really should be signing you to 1 or 2 year deals so we can give you those bonuses that help you out, especially the 1 year deals where the base salary is low, but you can get your bonus money. That's where you make it up. And if he really wants to stay in Florida, that might be a pathway for him to stay in Florida.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously reports are everywhere, but the most recent one was that there's a chance he's not really picky on where to go, and he might go to the highest bidder. So is Brad Marchand going to take that discount? I mean, he won 2 Stanley Cups. Maybe he wants to sign that 4-year deal and, stay with his family and find a home. So that's something to look out for in the next few days for sure.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah, no, for sure. And now we flip on to the losing side of this thing. The Edmonton Oilers lose second straight year in a row, come up short. Goaltending, again, continues to be an issue for this team. Chris Knobloch overcoached, overmanaged. He made changes after Game 4. There was no reason to make those changes. And now you look at yourself, and we'll get to Connor McDavid in a minute, but if you look at it, you have a glaring hole in between the pipes, and you have to figure out what your goaltending is. The issue is who's available.
How many years do we see this, Jim?
Mm-hmm.
It's been like this. When's the last time the Oilers have had a number 1 goalie?
They haven't.
And I'm sorry, but that 3rd goal he let in was absolutely unacceptable.
Unacceptable. Unacceptable.
Like it had me wondering, but I've been saying it since the start. Imagine this Oilers team with a number 1 goalie. But like you said, is there a lot out there? I think the best goalie on the market right now, the trade market is not trade market, free agent market is Jake Allen.
Does he stay in New Jersey?
Maybe Joe Hofer, RFA.
But you're gonna risk it. But you're gonna risk it on a non-proven goaltender in the league.
Like I was gonna say, unproven. The only proven guy who could play. Could Jake Allen play 60 games a season? I don't think so.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. He's a great goalie. I'll give him credit, but he's not a 1 goalie. So I think the only way the Oilers address this is if they go get that, they do a trade. But again,
is it John Gibson? Because if it was John Gibson, it should have been done already.
Yes, and the goalie market was last summer. We saw it with Jacob Markstrom, Linus Ullmark. Those are goalies that the Oilers should have been targeting. And
even Darcy Kemper, they could have figured out a way to get that done. They could have figured out a way to get somebody from somewhere to get a goaltender that could help them because, yeah, I know Stuart Skinner played great, but Cal Pickard, again, he lost the net. Calvin Pickard comes in, and you should have just stayed with Calvin Pickard after Game 5. At that point, when you pulled them in Game 4, they rallied to win. There's no point of going back to Stuart Skinner. If you have 2 goalies, you have no goalies.
I felt like they kept losing the net, both of them. It was either Pickard plays good, he plays bad, so Skinner goes in. They weren't allowing a bad performance from either goalie. And you can't have that. I'm sorry. You can't have 2 goalies playing in the final. You should a good team has that number one guy, and if he has a stinker, well, the next game he's gonna come to play.
Yeah, and you look at it and you say to yourself, Stuart Skinner lost the net last year. Cal Picker got injured after coming in for Stu Skinner. But the team in front of him didn't play well. And they have some question marks. Does Victor Arvidsson leave? Jeff Skinner, Vander Kane. And I think Vander Kane's going to be a prime target to be moved because they tried to move at the deadline. They need cap space. We know Bouchard's contract. He needs a contract extension. And we know 97 needs a contract extension. And he met with the media. The Oilers met with the media today, and he talked about it. The core's been together for a long time, and we're building something to this moment. With that being said, ultimately, I need to do what's best for me and my family. But, of course, there's always unfinished business here. And he talked about there's no rush to get a deal done. And it's the same thing. Before people freak out, and I know we've been having this narrative forever since we knew he could sign an extension in July 1. Oh, where's he going to go? Is he going to leave? He should leave Edmonton, all this stuff. Leon Draisaitl said the same thing last year when he was asked about the contract. And you know what happened? In August, he signed his extension. I think most people figured a contracted extension was going to happen July 1st. It's not going to happen July 1st. I think it happens in the summer or before the season, like Austin Matthews in Toronto. I don't see Connor McDavid leaving. I just don't see it.
No, I think, if maybe the Oilers won the cup, it would push McDavid to be like, okay, I figured it out here in Edmonton. Maybe I could go on to my new journey. But he won't leave. He won't cement his legacy as the guy who lost 2 times with his team. And I don't think Oilers fans should worry too much about Connor McDavid. I think he probably wants to see how the summer goes, see what his GM does. And I think by training camp, he's locked. And he's the most expensive player in the National Hockey League. Do
you think it's more, is it an 8-year deal, or do you think it's shorter term like Matthews, 5-6-year deal?
Well, I think if it is a 4 or 5-year deal, that's probably means that's my last 4 years as an Edmonton Oiler.
Yeah.
But I could see him taking that max contract and, locking himself in. And like I said, players like that, they have leverage. And if they ever want to leave, I think the organization will grant it to them.
Right. And the other point of this is Leon Draisaitl doesn't sign for 8 years, knowing McDavid was going to leave in a couple.
Exactly. I don't see it. I don't see a world where McDavid leaves next summer. And I think if that does happen, let's say McDavid goes to management this summer and says, I'm not re-signing with you, we're going to see another Mikko Rantanen trade.
Yeah.
Except bigger.
Bigger.
This time I can't come up with a trade proposal. I always bring up with them, but there's zero for Connor McDavid.
Well, everybody would link up to the Leafs and the Rangers, and every team in the league would want Connor McDavid. They would give up whatever they wanted to get Connor McDavid. But the issue is we've seen it. They can't build around a couple of guys. Bouchard's going to get paid. Eventually, look, I know Darnell Nurse is one of their guys on the back end, but eventually you're going to have to move on from that $9.5 million, even with the cap going up.
Oh, no, they have to, for sure. Bouchard is getting north of $10 million this summer, whether you like it or not. So,
yeah.
Or let's have to figure it out.
And I think if Vander Kane goes, it's just a matter of where. But he has a 16-team no-trade list, so that's an issue. He can't go to half the teams.
And Arvidsson has a full no-movement clause. So,
and that goes back to Jeff Jackson, July 1st, right? He was, quote-unquote, the general manager at the time after Kenny Holland didn't come back. And then Stan Bowman came in a couple of weeks later and then had to deal with the offer sheet situation. And here we are.
Yeah, I wonder if this Oilers team had a stronger push if they had Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway still.
And of course, a healthy Zach Hyman.
And a healthy Zach Hyman. So, good on the Oilers, obviously, but they clearly got outclassed in this final. It was pretty obvious. You were there. You saw it.
Oh, yeah. They got outclassed in every game in Florida. They found a way to come back because of a stupid penalty by Sam Bennett in Game 4. They were able to finally score on a power play and establish their game, but they never got off to good starts. They got outscored 13-4 and 15-4 in first periods. They gave up two or more goals in Game 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the first period. Like the last couple of games, it was 2-0 after the first period in every game. Like you're not going to win if you chase the series, and that was the problem. They kept chasing the series, and at the end, they looked tired. They just looked tired and defeated.
And another problem was the head coach of the Oilers playing Connor McDavid and Draisaitl way too much.
Well, what I didn't understand is it was 2-0 after the first, but it was 1-0 after 6 minutes in the game 6, and he went to the nuclear option. But the Oilers were generating offense, and they were generating zone time. And the minute they put those two guys together, they gave up another goal, and the game was over.
Just panic. It was just panic. That's all it was. But like I said, going to be a busy summer in Edmonton for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know what's going to be a busy place, David? It's going to be a busy place in Big D, down in Dallas. It's going to be a big, big-time summer because, look, they already locked up Matt Duchene to a 4-year contract extension, $4.5 million. He's got first 2 years, he's got a no-movement clause. The second, if they get a second buyout window, after year 2, they could buy him out if they wanted to. I wouldn't have given him 4 years. I guess that's what you have to give him, even though he didn't have a – right. But his playoff production wasn't greatest. The entire team didn't play great in the playoffs. I think it's the law of diminishing returns. I think he had something to prove after Nashville. He was getting 1-year deals. Now he's got a stability. I'm not sure if Matt Duchene puts up the same numbers that we saw Matt Duchene put up in the first couple of years in Dallas.
And I'm also not sure that deal makes sense for Dallas.
No, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't make sense. Because why would you give him a 4-year deal knowing that he's going to be 35 soon? Knowing that, okay, we can give you a 1 or 2 year deal. And then we can, if you really want to stay for 2 more seasons, we can do it the right way, like we're going to do with Jamie Benn, where we're going to maximize the 35-plus clause in the CBA.
Not to mention, they have hundreds of thousands in cap space right now.
Yeah, $400-something thousand. And they still have to move Mason Marchman. They still have to move one of Matt Dumba or Ilya Lyubushkin or both. Now, maybe Maverick Bourque leaves. Oh, and not to mention there's the Jason Robertson rumors that won't go away, but I don't think he's leaving. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. It wouldn't be the first time. But I just feel like it's a Brady Tkachuk situation where that's a lot of the outside noise, and the people in Dallas are just saying, no, they're going to exhaust other options because that's a piece we don't want to give up on.
I'd be shocked if Jim Neal trades Jason Robertson to re-sign Duchene and Jamie Benn.
Yeah.
Right? But they have to move, like you said, these guys, Lyubushkin and Dumba, let's say both. Who's going to go on defense and with what money? So they're in big trouble, and there's a high possibility that there's a lot of league minimum deals going to Dallas on defense this summer.
Yeah.
If that's the case. And then Mikael Granlund, too, has to be signed.
Well, that's if they can afford. I don't know if he's going to be. I think he goes someplace else. I think he's going to maximize his value someplace else.
He's priced out of Dallas.
The Duchene deal today priced him out. Let's be honest. It priced him out.
Maverick Bourque, a team could offer sheet him, tomorrow morning or whatever, tomorrow when it opens up for $1 million, and Dallas are screwed.
Yeah, they can't match it. They can't match it.
So, that's someone to watch as well. Mason Marchman, you could get some money. You could get some.
You could get something for him. It's $4.5 million in cap space that you don't have.
But they're desperate.
They're desperate.
Dallas is desperate. So teams are not going to give up a lot of money, a lot of assets.
Just look what the Rangers did to get Chris Kreider off their books and what they got back. They got a third-tier prospect from Anaheim and draft pick. When realistically, they should have been asking, if they retained a little bit of money, they could have got a higher prospect for their team and a better draft pick.
Well, Anaheim was definitely the winners in that situation.
Yeah.
And you're going to see other teams try and take advantage of Dallas for Mason Marchman, for sure. Same thing for Matt Dumba and Lyubushkin. They're going to ask for picks back.
Maybe they buy out Dumba.
I don't know. Dallas is, Jamie Benn's not going to ask for $2 million.
No, but he's over 35, and you can give him a 1-year deal where it's the low base salary and you make it up in bonuses.
Yeah, hopefully. I think Jamie Benn, $3.5 million or more. I'm sorry, but you got to go.
Yeah. I know they want to make him a Dallas. Well, Jim Nell says he's a Dallas star for life, so then they're going to find a way to get that done. And if they do, then that's great. But if they don't, well, he's out the door. And they priced themselves out because they signed Matt Duchene to a 4-year, $4.5 million deal. And
look,
and I know, look, you made the trade for Rantanen, and it's great. You gave him $12 million. It's fine. but now you put yourself in cap hell. And I don't hear anybody using the no state income tax as an excuse for Dallas right now, because if there was such an advantage, they'd have if somebody put it to me, they'd have an extra $10 million to spend, which they don't.
Yeah, and they're going to have to do some tough decisions. Maybe, you never know. Jason Robertson could get traded. It is smoke right now.
It is smoke.
When teams heard about this, you don't think they came up with some solid offers for him?
No, I bet you they did. And I think Dallas wants to recoup whatever they lost in that deal to Carolina.
No futures for Dallas. No cap space. It's going to be a heck of a summer down there, that's for sure.
No, need a new coach. They fired Pete DeBoer, so you need a new coach. So you need that as well. So Jim Nill has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and this loss definitely hurt them, and it's going to show for years to come, because Dallas you could argue they had everything to win the Cup this year.
Yeah, they did.
Maybe, you could argue maybe their defense was a bit weak on the right side, but they had 3 elite left-hand defensemen in Esa Lindell, Miro Heiskanen, and Thomas Harley. And then next summer, there's Thomas Harley to sign, Jason Robertson to sign, Jake Ottinger to sign.
No, Jake Ottinger.
Jake Ottinger to sign. Yeah, he was signed.
His 8-year deal, but his 8-year deal kicks in.
Yeah, he recently signed. Sorry. J-Rob Harley. Save $20 million for them.
Yeah, because you're going to need it. Because those guys are going to be worth something. And Dallas has a lot of work to do in that division. We know Colorado signed, Brock Nelson to a deal. They're going to be looking for a second-line center. We know Winnipeg needs a second-line center. But then, we mentioned New York. Let's throw this in here. We know Kreider went to Anaheim. Do we think Anaheim's going to do anything big besides Ekblad because of, they want to make the playoffs?
They have a lot of money. Jim. So I think if they've been active before on the free agent market, they signed Alex Killorn.
Right.
They signed Ryan Strome. They obviously acquired big fish like Chris Kreider, Jacob Trouba. Those are high-paid salaries. And they did say they want to make the playoffs. I do think they need another piece to try to even sniff the playoffs in the Pacific, because who's in the Pacific right now that's going to make the playoffs for sure right now? Edmonton, Vegas, LA.
That's 3. And Calgary's knocking on the door.
Vancouver could, they could
bounce
swing
back. Yeah, Vancouver could come out of nowhere. San Jose's going to be a better team.
Seattle's where they are.
And Seattle's where they are. Yeah, exactly.
And
Seattle's where they are.
No, Anaheim. Yeah.
Anaheim, yeah. So I could put 4 or 5 teams ahead of the Ducks already.
I do think they're going to inquire on Marner, who we're going to get to in a minute.
Yeah, I think so too. But that leaves all right. So let's bring it in then. We know Mitch Marner's the top dog, the free agent. A lot of indications are he's not going to sign right away on July 1st, which makes sense. Get offers, see what you're going to do. Maybe it's maybe it's a Zach Parise, Ryan Suter situation. After the holiday in the States, we make the announcement that you're signing someplace, right? Anaheim. I think he's going west. I don't think he's staying east. Carolina will inquire, but the owner's not going to pay for him.
It's not happening. I don't think so.
Not going to happen. Well, Columbus will make an effort to get him, because I think the whole Johnny Gaudreau situation a couple of years ago, where it came out of nowhere that he just signed in Columbus, and it's like, oh, really? Okay. Well, they're building something there, so he could fit with that.
They've done it before, yeah.
They've done it before, but I think he goes west, and I think West Coast team, Utah, Vegas, LA, or Anaheim.
Throw in San Jose, maybe
yeah.
For the sake of money.
But they're not ready to win yet.
No, and I think I don't see him going to Anaheim either, just because they're not a proven contending team yet. So I really think the 3 is LA, Vegas, Utah. Yeah. And I do think LA is more of it's just pure speculation, because the more I see it, he's a Vegas Golden Knight or Utah. Man.
Yeah, I mean, look, LA needs a winger. They could add another scoring guy like that to make a core 4 there in LA, because they just need something else to put them over the top. But I think going back to last year at the draft in Vegas, Ryan Smith, Bill Armstrong, they wanted to get Mitch Marner, and they couldn't get it from Toronto. They just couldn't make the deal work. I think they're going to try to make a splash, but if Vegas is trying to bring him in, we know Eichel needs a new deal. You're going to have to move out somebody.
Oh, yeah. And that's another team who's going to desperately give up their high-paid contracts, like William Karlsson. He's been linked to Montreal. He could play second-line center. Teams who want a second-line center are going to be licking their chops for him because they could probably get a nice bargain, knowing that Vegas definitely want Marner. It's out there.
Yeah. And then they have Nick Hague, who's been rumored to leave too, who could go to Montreal too.
Yeah, so it's a good opportunity for teams to leverage Vegas because, if you think of Vegas and Utah as the fits for Marner, they're quiet markets, very quiet. LA, they're a bit more loud, obviously it's not Toronto, it's not Montreal, but it's a louder market. But if you look at Vegas and Utah, nice place to be with your family and sign long-term, and it's quiet, hockey's not really the number one.
Especially Utah. Utah's definitely off the radar kind of place.
Vegas, it's gained some traction in hockey, but it's still quiet. Anything compared to Toronto is quiet, but I think he's going west, and I think it's Vegas. And the more the days go on, it's looking like Vegas. And you're just waiting for that one trade for the Dominoes to fall and be like, okay, Vegas has cleared the money and they're signing Mitch Marner.
Right. I think Utah will take a run at him, though. Hard run at him. I think they'll take a hard run at him.
And many players this summer for sure.
Yeah, because they want to win and get back in the playoffs. And you talk about it real quick before we transition to Habs real quick. We mentioned Anaheim in their own division. Well, we didn't even mention the Central. Remember, Dallas is probably going back playoffs. Colorado, Winnipeg, St. Louis, Nashville's in there. Minnesota, Utah, if Utah gets better. So it's not only your own division top three. To make wild card, you got to worry about the other division. Are they better than those other teams? They took a 20 and they took a 21-point jump and fired their coach.
Yeah, they did. And even Utah, if you look at their division, it's not easy, man. The Central is going to be a hard place to earn a playoff spot, and Utah definitely have to improve. And they did get lucky getting the 4th overall pick, and that I'm going to assume that in the next few days we're going to hear a lot of chatter with that pick.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because a team like Utah, who made such a stride and still got lottery luck, should be looking at every way to improve their roster with such a great asset like a 4th overall pick.
Right, and especially if it's the Islanders, maybe you can get something out of the Islanders to help your team now.
Noah Dobson, maybe.
Maybe Romanov. Who knows?
They have a weapon. The 4th overall pick. Teams want it, and I think they could probably get a good piece if they don't get Mitch Marner.
Right. So let's talk Montreal Canadiens. They have 2 picks in the first round. Is that correct?
Yeah, 16, 17.
I do believe they're going to move one of those picks to improve their team.
They should, yeah.
That's my opinion. That's my opinion on it. But I also seen a trend. Boston had back-to-back picks, didn't really do too much. Devils had 3 picks in the first round one year. Nothing really panned out on it. I think if you have a second pick in the first round, you have to utilize it to your advantage to try to move it and get something that'll help your team now. Obviously, the Habs need a second-line center. They're going to need some D. Top 6 is a priority for this team. Everybody needs we've been saying it all year. I think the theme all year was everybody needs a second-line center. But the Canadiens do because Jeff Gordon put pressure on Kirby Dach here in press conferences said we got to see what he is because we just don't know. And he's been injured.
And it's not like they reiterated that they're planning on using him as second-line center next year. No. So it's obvious they're working the phones. They want to get that second-line center, and they do have draft capital prospects. A 16th overall selection is a lot of value, like I said. And if you could combine both, you could probably get an elite player.
Yeah.
Right? But, let's say Montreal uses both picks. It probably means they're looking at the free agent market.
Right.
But like I said, it's getting down each day. But he's been rumored with Claude Giroux yesterday.
Yeah.
That's someone who I think if he doesn't sign in Ottawa,
that's a good spot for him.
I really think Montreal Canadiens are the favorite for him. Just because it's close to home, it's an hour and a half drive. And, obviously as a family at his age, he's not really looking for that big paycheck. maybe a 2-year deal. But other than that, you can't give that much for a 35-year-old. But like I said, Montreal, I know look at a lot of options. They also have Logan Mailloux. That's a piece that teams are going to be interested in. 6'3", right-handy. They have other prospects in the mix. It's hard to imagine what they're doing right now because I feel like they've been linked to every player in the last few weeks.
Yeah, it feels like it, right? And even Marco Rossi they've been linked to because he could be a player that could be offer sheeted this summer for sure. And the Canadiens would have the assets to make it work.
Yeah, they could offer sheet basically in any range. They have all the draft picks possible to do so.
I mean, I would take a shot at Marco Rossi. I mean, they did it with Aho and it didn't work, but it feels like Minnesota is moving on from Marco Rossi.
Yeah, and maybe Peterka.
Yeah, you could get Peterka out of Buffalo. I mean, that would be something if he moved.
I think a lot of teams. I think if Buffalo don't trade him by the draft, he's gonna have a lot of teams trying to offer sheet him. That's for sure, and it's up to him to choose ultimately. But yeah, he's a goner. You could look at Will Cooley. That's someone who could be an offer sheet target. Matthew Nyes, would he sign to Montreal? We don't know, but money talks for sure.
Yeah, but I think he's gonna stay in Toronto.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I think Montreal's going to look at every option. But, Gordon said if he can't find a center, you could try and find a winger who could drive a line. And, when I think of the free agent market, there's Nick Ehlers. Would he be a nice piece for Montreal? There's Brock Besser out there. But like I said, it's getting the list. We're going to, it's getting lower each day with Duchesne signing. Granlund, another piece. There's a lot of options for Montreal. They're going to go the younger route, the proven forward route. It's yet to see, but they also have to improve on other aspects for sure.
Yeah, definitely. They do need to improve in other aspects for sure. And obviously, it's going to be an exciting time. The NHL draft is next week. It's coming up next Thursday. It should be a good time. And, there's going to be a lot of action leading up to it. And we'll have another episode of the Full Press Hockey Rumors Weekly Podcast next week before we talk some NHL draft. We're going to dive into some more rumors as well. Because we mentioned our favorite team, Buffalo. So we'll talk about Buffalo next time because we always have to talk Buffalo at some point. But lots of great insight here, guys. It's been the Full Press NHL Weekly Rumors Podcast. Myself, Jim Biringer, David Calabretta. Guys, get it up iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, follow along, and link is below. Take care, everybody.
Full Press Hockey Coverage with Jim Biringer.